Hello, welcome to the course SJPHY2B02 Mechanics 2. The contents of this course is taken from An Introduction to Mechanics by Kleppner and Kolenko. We will continue to discuss topics from Module 2, Central Force Motion. In the previous two classes, we were discussing about the orbits of planetary motion, where we have seen that the shape of the orbit is determined by either the total energy, capital E, or eccentricity, small e. So we have seen if total energy is greater than 0 or eccentricity greater than 1, then the orbit corresponds to an hyperbola. In eccentricity equal to 1 or total energy equal to 0, it corresponds to a parabola. When eccentricity is less than 1 or total energy is negative, that corresponds to an ellipse. And there is a special case when energy is minimum or eccentricity equal to 0, then the orbit corresponds to a circle. We have also derived the equation for the orbit in the case of an inverse square force, U of r equal to minus c by r. So here we have seen that the orbit corresponds to an equation r equal to r naught divided by 1 minus e cos theta, where r naught is the radius of the circular orbit. But there is one practical issue with this equation, because eccentricity is not something which you can directly measure using an experiment. So we need to express the orbit in terms of experimentally accessible parameters like kinetic energy or angular momentum, something like that. So in today's class, what we are going to do, we will take the special case of hyperbolic orbit, and in that case we will try to express the orbit equation in terms of some of the experimental parameters. And what kind of a scenario leads to hyperbolic orbit? One example could be the motion of a comet about Sun. Another common example is trajectory of charged particles scattering off an atomic nucleus. Okay. So as always, we are going to consider the one body problem, where instead of the individual masses, we will be talking only in terms of the reduced mass mu. So let's say the speed of mu is v0 when mu is far away from the origin, and the initial path has the origin at a distance b. So ideally this should have been the straight line, the dotted straight line should have been the original path, but as we know, because of the repulsive centrifugal force, it deflects off. So this is kind of a scattering from a potential barrier. Okay. And this offset distance is known as impact parameter b. And angular momentum, magnitude of the angular momentum L, is given by mu v naught b, because v naught and b are perpendicular to each other, and magnitude of the kinetic energy, capital E, is half mu v naught square. And this is the standard equation of the orbit. Now we know that r naught, the radius of the circular orbit, is given as L square by mu c, and from this equation I can write L square equal to mu square v naught square b square, and divide that with mu c. You have mu v naught square b square by c, but half mu v naught square is e, so mu v naught square is 2e. So I can write r naught equal to 2e b square divided by c. Same way, eccentricity E is given by 1 plus 2el square divided by mu c square. Let's make some manipulations in this equation, and from this equation I know L square by mu c equal to 2e b square by c. So I have an L square by mu term, which I can write as 2eb square. So substitute for L square by mu in this equation, you get eccentricity E equal to square root of 1 plus 2eb by c whole square. Now, from this equation, you can note that the value of R is minimum when the denominator is maximum. So that happens when cos theta is minus 1 or theta equal to pi. So I can say when theta equal to pi, the value of R equal to R minimum. So R minimum equal to R naught divided by 1 minus R into cos theta. Cos theta is minus 1 now, so this is R naught divided by 1 plus E. So we know the expression for R naught and E. Substitute in this equation, you get R minimum equal to 2EB square by C divided by 1 plus square root of 1 plus 2EB by C square. So see, all the equations are now written in terms of the kinetic energy, which is a measurable parameter. So you, by performing experiments, you can actually get the value of the R minimum now. Now, what are the limits of R minimum? When energy equal to 0, you can see that R minimum is going to be 0, and when energy E equal to infinity, when you substitute in this equation, you get R minimum equal to B. So these are the maxima and minimum values for R minimum. And the angle of the asymptote. So asymptote is this straight line which should have been the original path had this repulsive centrifugal potential not been there. Okay, so the angle of the asymptote can be found from the orbit equation by letting R equal to infinity, because you can see that as you approach the origin, the asymptote deviates considerably from the curve. On the other hand, at a large distance, the straight line almost corresponds to the hyperbola. So we will take the limiting case R tends to infinity. So at this point, angle of the hyperbola and the angle of the asymptote both are same. So I call this angle as theta A, and you will find that theta A equal to 1 by theta. So theta is this angle. So I'm not going into the details of this derivation. I just mentioned it as a matter of fact. And what is the scattering angle? So you can see, if the potential barrier was not there, this should have been the original path. Now because of the scattering from the barrier, the path deviates into this particular direction. So this angle is the scattering angle. I call it as psi. So this angle is theta A, this is theta A. So this is 2 theta A. The entire thing is 180 degree or pi radians. So the scattering angle psi is given by pi minus 2 theta. So that's about hyperbolic orbits. Let's do the similar exercise in the case of elliptical orbit. Remember, elliptical orbit corresponds to eccentricity E less than 1 or total energy E less than 0. So once again, let's start from the general equation R equal to R naught divided by 1 minus E cos theta. You can see the maximum value of R occurs at theta equal to 0, where cos theta becomes 1. So R max equal to R naught divided by 1 minus E. And the minimum value we have seen in the previous case occurs at theta equal to pi. So at this angle, R minimum corresponds to R naught divided by 1 plus E. So if you take this as the origin, so this is your R max, theta corresponds to 0. Rotate counterclockwise by pi degree, you have the R minimum here. For example, if you consider the motion of moon around Earth, so the orbit of moon is an elliptical orbit, and here R minimum corresponds to the point of closest approach, and this distance is known as perigee. And R max corresponds to the point of farthest approach, and this distance is known as apogee. And from this figure you can note that the length of the major axis A equal to R minimum plus R maximum. So in terms of eccentricity, I can write it as A equal to R naught divided by 1 plus E plus R naught divided by 1 minus E. Let's make some simplification. So this is 2 R naught divided by 1 minus E square. And we know that R naught equal to L square by mu C, and eccentricity E equal to square root of 1 plus 2 EL square by mu C square. So make the substitution, you get A equal to 2L square by mu C divided by 1 minus 1 plus 2 EL square by mu C square. So this one and this one cancel, and you cancel the similar terms on the numerator and denominator. You get a simple expression A equal to C divided by minus E. There are two important observations. First one, the length of the major axis is independent of the angular momentum because you do not have an L term in the equation. And second one, orbits with same major axis have same energy, right? So if you look at this figure, you have several different orbits. Orbits have a completely different shape, but since the length of the major axis is same in all the cases, the total energy is going to be the same. So the shape doesn't matter as long as the major axis length is the same, and all the orbits are going to have the same energy. And if you take the ratio of maximum R divided by minimum R, so this is R naught divided by 1 minus E divided by R naught divided by 1 plus E. So R naught cancel, you have 1 plus E divided by 1 minus E. So when eccentricity is close to 0, then you can disregard the E terms on both sides. So essentially you have R max divided by R min almost equal to 1. So R max equal to R minimum. So what's the meaning of R max equal to R minimum? The ellipse turns into a circle, right? Because in the case of circle, radius is same in all the directions. On the other hand, when eccentricity is close to 1, then you can see that 1 plus E is going to be much higher than 1 minus E. So R max is very, very high compared to R minimum. In other words, the ellipse is going to get highly elongated. So you can see the shape of the ellipse is determined entirely by eccentricity E. So you can see in this figure, when eccentricity equal to 0, you have a perfect circle. When eccentricity approaches 1, you have a highly elongated ellipse, and in between you have an ellipse of varying degrees. Right? So eccentricity is the one which determines the shape. And before stopping, you can just look at the eccentricity value of various planets in our solar system. So you can see that except Mercury and Pluto, all other planets have eccentricity very close to 0. That's the reason why all these planets have almost circular orbits. On the other hand, Mercury and Pluto have slightly higher eccentricity. Consequently, their orbit corresponds more to an ellipse than a circle. Now, if you look at the history of astrophysics, there was an Egyptian astrologer known as Claudius Ptolemy who made a proposition in the 2nd century that all the planets move around Earth in circular orbit. So this was the early days of astrophysics, and this model is known as the geocentric model. And the early observations done by astrologers all over the world, their observation concurred with this theory, because in those days people were mainly able to see planets from Venus to Neptune. And all these planets incidentally have circular orbits. So people believed that the theory given by Ptolemy is entirely correct. But now we know that the geocentric model is not correct. In fact, it's completely wrong, because in the case of solar system, the center is Sun and all the planets move around Sun. And one of the reasons Ptolemy's theory got immense popularity in the early days was the experimental physicists were not able to observe Mercury and Pluto. Had they observed Mercury and Pluto, they would have realized that these two planets do not have circular orbits, and that would have disputed Ptolemy's theory. And why they were not able to observe Mercury and Pluto? If you look at the solar system, you can see that Mercury is very close to Sun, and Sun is extremely bright, right? So the extreme brightness of the Sun will mask Mercury. On the other hand, Pluto is very, very far from Sun, and in those early days, they did not have all the sophisticated telescopes, so they were not able to observe Pluto. So Pluto remained undiscovered until 1930. So because of these two, in the initial days, people believed that all the planets move in circular orbits. And now we know that that's not correct. It depends entirely on the eccentricity of each planet. And if you consider something like a comet, Halley's comet, you can see eccentricity value is very high. It's almost 1. So consequently, the orbit of Halley's comet corresponds to a highly elongated ellipse. So in summary, the shape of the orbit is determined entirely by the parameter known as eccentricity. So that's for today. In next class, we will discuss about Kepler's third law. Stay tuned for that. Thank you.